Hi, everybody. My name is Craig Brockie, and this is a public service announcement. I just wanted to give you some information to help you and your loved ones. There's a lot of craziness and panic and concern in the world right now about coronavirus. And of course, staying safe and healthy is important. Bolstering your immune system and avoiding contracting a disease is important. But I want to talk about the financial effects of the coronavirus and how that is going to impact everybody and how to be ready for that. First of all, I don't claim to be 100% right about everything. I've been wrong in the past, so take that into consideration. However, I was correct in calling the 2008 financial collapse before it happened. In fact, this video here that I released on October 1st, 2007 was the exact month that the stock market peaked. And I was referring people to read this book called Conquer the Crash so they would be prepared for what lied ahead. And the reason I was so confident at that time that the stock market and the financial collapse was going to occur was, of course, that the real estate market had collapsed already. And even though that was pretty obvious to some people that that was going to have some repercussions across the entire financial system, at that time the stock market was still climbing and there was no word of a financial collapse and no one saw the bank failures coming and the bank bail-ins and all that kind of stuff. So, and here's actually what I have been wrong, is we just completed the longest bull market in the history of the stock market. So what I made wrong in the past was expecting this to end before it actually did. So that was my bad. However, now that we've had this coronavirus hit and the economic impacts of that, this is kind of like very similar in economic effect, actually probably more so than the housing collapse, where we've had all kinds of businesses having to shutter their businesses, people out of work, and yes, there's a stimulus package coming to the tune of, I believe, $6 trillion in the U.S. alone. However, that's barely moved the U.S. dollar in terms of its value. That kind of money printing should devalue the U.S. dollar, and we're not seeing that at all. In fact, I believe what the Federal Reserve and the government is facing right now is a deflationary move. Now, not to panic, because in the short term, if you have any stocks or mutual funds, now is not the time to sell them. In fact, I believe we're just beginning one of the sharpest, quickest, and biggest stock market rallies that you'll see. But it's going to be a bear market rally. So here's the collapse in 1929 here. And then you can see it jumped all the way down here. But look at this move back here. So it recovered almost half of the losses. And I expect that's going to happen right now. So we've had extremely oversold conditions in the stock market. Hopefully you didn't panic and sell in the last week or so. And what you can wait for a few months until the stock market starts to peak again, and you'll look and you'll see the VIX, which is the volatility index. You want to see that drop into below 20 for sure, probably in the mid-teens. And then we're probably going to get this big move down into the bottom. And that's what you really want to be ready for, okay? Because that's where things really get ugly. This first move is bad, but this next move here where it bottoms, that's where everybody gets crushed. So you want to be out of the way for that. But in the next few months, as the stock market rallies, you know, there might be people thinking, oh, wow, the worst is over, and, you know, not worried about it. In fact, even a few months ago, the consensus was that, you know, there was no beating Donald Trump in the next election because the stock markets and the economy is going so well. There's just no way that he's going to lose to anybody. Wow. And I felt differently. I felt, wow, we've just completed the longest bull market. And if there's a collapse or even a bear market before the re-election, what happens is presidents typically actually don't get reelected in a bear market. You know, when times are tough, people don't want the same thing. They want change. So that's going to be an uphill battle for Donald Trump to get reelected. But coming over here, this is what I really wanted to talk to you about. I mean, if you have savings, hopefully you do. You're not one of those people living paycheck to paycheck. If you are, I'll talk about that in a moment. But you want to be selling into the next few months while things are rebounding. You want to be unloading any kind of real estate, any kind of assets that you can, because in a deflationary collapse, everything goes down in value except the value of cash or money. Even precious metals go down in a deflationary environment, especially silver, because it's more of a commodity used for industrial purposes. But this is the real important part. If you have money in the bank, and hopefully you do, and you have some savings, in 2008 to present, we had 465 banks close. And in the Great Depression, we had thousands of banks close. And not only that, but mutual funds, which were called investment trusts at the time. In fact, they had to rebrand them from using the name investment trusts, because at the time, all the investment trusts or mutual funds at the time went bankrupt in the Great Depression. So if you're holding stocks in mutual funds or exchange traded funds, I don't care what form you're holding stocks or equities, even bonds, you want to be unloading those things and liquidating them. But that becomes, where do you put your money? Where's a safe place to put it? Now here, we've had all these bank failures, and even a huge bank called Washington Mutual went down in the 2008 crisis, worth over $300 billion, I believe. So in the last recession or financial crisis, we had what's called bank bailouts, where the government and the Federal Reserve printed a whole bunch of money and threw it at the banks. Okay? Well, times have changed, people, and it's not good, because in 2012, we had an event in the country of Cyprus. And instead of having, when the collapse happened there, instead of doing a bank bailout, they did what's called a bank bail-in, where they actually confiscated depositors' money to handle the bank's obligations. Now, here's a little known fact. When you put money into a bank, you actually are foregoing the ownership of that capital. It now becomes the bank's asset, and you get an IOU from the bank. So it's really not your money anymore. You're just hoping that they're not going to need, that they'll be able to pay you back when you want your money. Now, the problem with that is there's something called fractional reserve banking. And this is a great link. I'm going to put all the links in the YouTube video here so you can follow along. But here's fractional reserve banking, and there's a little video here that you can watch, and it just shows how money gets multiplied. First of all, it comes from nothing by the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank, and does not have your best interests in mind. So we got the Federal Reserve that's looking out for number one, which is themselves, and then you have fractional reserve banking, where banks can basically lend money out to people at nothing, and they're basically making money out of nothing, and it just, the money supply gets multiplied, and they have almost no reserves. So if people come to the bank saying, "Hey, I'd like to withdraw my money," they don't have it to give it to you. Okay, so that's a big problem. Now, what's worse is that this bank bail-ins thing that happened in Cyprus has now been legislated into most countries around the world, including the United States, Canada, most of Europe. And so here's an article on Investopedia talking about how bank bail-ins will be the new bailouts. Scary, right? And here, if you don't believe Investopedia, here's the New York Fed, which is one of the Federal Reserve banks, talking about bank bail-ins. And here's the FDIC. There's this perception that if you keep your money in a institution in the United States, that as long as you keep your bank balance below $250,000, that you're fine, and that the FDIC will come in and insure your capital. Okay, well, this article and these articles talk to the contrary of that. If there's actual financial crisis, they can invoke what's called bank bail-ins and confiscate your capital. So that's the truth of the matter. Furthermore, even if the insurance was available, I wouldn't want to be in that lineup for a handout from the FDIC to insure my bank failure, okay? So when you want to keep your money safe, that brings me over to here. So there's this service, and I'm not an affiliate for any of these services, guys. I have no financial interest in anything that I'm referring you today. This is purely just a help flow, okay? Hopefully you can have some knowledge, gives you more control, and you can help others, okay? And the more of us that get through this unscathed or with as little damage as possible, the better. So there's a service called Wise Ratings, and you can check the soundness of the bank. So there's actually only 10 banks in the United States that have an A+ rating, 10, okay? And there's also 18 credit unions that have an A+ rating. So what I would suggest is it's only $25 to pull a report from these guys, find out a bank or a credit union, if you prefer, that's got a great rating, great safety, and put some of your capital there. And maybe split it across a few different banks, okay? And I used to bank in Switzerland because it's got a lot of history and known to be a very safe place to bank. However, even Switzerland has got bank bail-ins now. Another country that is known to be very, very safe for banking, Singapore, also has bank bail-ins. The plus side of these things, of these countries though, is Switzerland and Singapore are much sounder financially than the United States. The United States lives on borrowed money. In fact, there's a perception that the United States is the world's most prosperous, richest nation. Well, if you look at their balance sheet, they're actually the poorest nation in the world. There's no one in the world that owns more trillions of dollars than the United States, over $20 trillion currently. Here's another fact. Going into the last depression, I believe we're going to have a depression this time, not just a recession. I hope that I'm wrong. But going into the last depression, the British pound was the world's reserve currency. Right now it's the US dollar. Going into the last depression, the UK pound or the British pound had the British government had the most debt, and the US had the most, was the highest creditor nation. Now going into this depression, going into this strong recession or bear market or whatever you want to call it, hopefully it's not a depression, but going into this one, the US is the reserve currency, but it's got the most debt of anybody on the planet. So it's feasible, although hopefully it's not going to happen, but that the US dollar loses its position as the world's reserve currency. What would take over for that? I'm not sure. Could be another country's currency, or it could be a new currency, like a one world currency. Who knows? I'm hoping that doesn't happen. Anyway, so what we're going to have here, as far as I'm concerned, as we had this first drop here, we're going to have a nice sharp rally here where you want to be selling into that. You want to be liquidating your assets and preparing your banking, okay? Now, I think you want to get into a safe bank as soon as you can, because we've had so many not defaults, but there's been such an economic hit to the economy lately with all these businesses going down, closing, people who are living paycheck to paycheck, being out of work for 2 to 4 weeks. That's devastating to them. And furthermore, business owners like restaurants who've had to forego dine-in service. There's all kinds of businesses. Right now here in Florida, where I'm in Clearwater Beach, Florida, just today, there's a safer at home order that has come in that's telling people to basically close all non-essential businesses. That's going to have an impact. The beach here is spring break right now. I live right in the Clearwater Beach area. It's the #1 beach in America 2 years in a row. It's desolate. There's no one there. I took a jet ski ride there 2 days ago with my wife. We were just going past the beach, and there was hardly anybody out there. In fact, the people that were there were just boaters that had pulled up and were just standing on the beach, and they were usually waiting in the water because they didn't want to break the law and be on the beach. But usually there's just thousands and thousands, and the hotels are full. Like, just think of the impact on those hotels and their ability to meet their mortgage payments and their lines of credit with the bank. All of that's under pressure right now. So I would suggest getting your money, if you have money right now, getting it into a safe bank. First move. Okay, let's see what we got. Now, if you don't have savings, let's make sure that you're safe too. So if you're one of the people that lives paycheck to paycheck, or you have a lot of debt and non-assets, that's fine, but let's think positive. Let's look for opportunities here. So what you want to do, in my opinion, is add a lot of value. And I'm not an affiliate for any of these services, is add a lot of value to your company instead of going into work or seeing the problems, look for the opportunities, see how you can add value to the business that you're working with. And one of those ways is helping a business get more online reviews. Now, a lot of people, when they're looking for a service, they'll go to Google, Yelp, and they'll look to see which business has a lot of reviews. Well, if you can help your business legitimately provide a high level of service to your customers, get online reviews, that's going to help your business. That's one thing. Or just whatever job that you're doing, look at how you can do it better, how you can add more value. Have a team meeting. Provide some positive leadership right now for your group, saying, hey guys, this is going to be a tough time. Let's rise above this. Let's see how we can do better than everybody else in our industry. And that starts with me. How can I add more value to this company? And if you want some inspiration, this is a guy I love, Grant Cardone. And there's lots of positive people out there. Grant's one of these guys who just says 10x things. Whatever you're doing right now, how can you 10x it? And I stand behind him. I think he's a great person to look up to. And he's got all kinds of free training online, lots of great videos. I mean, there's lots of positive people. So whoever indicates to you as someone who's a positive person, who's going to not be fear-mongering, I'd say turn off the news, unplug from the mainstream media. Those people do not have your best interest at heart. And look for people that you do believe in, people that are going to provide positive leadership. Now, I hope this video has helped you in some way. It's not intended to scare you, it's to prepare you and to give you hope. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the comment box here on YouTube, and I will get to them. And that's it. So all the best to you. Let's make lemonade out of lemons here. And I hope that you and your family and your loved ones are safe and protected and prosper throughout this next few years. Okay? Take care.